So I am preparing to get ready for classes again for the spring semester. It's 2021. And I thought a really good way to start the academic year or the academic semester would be to pull something from my grandmother's stacks. So I had this book out maybe a few months ago, and then I started tidying up and I put it back on the stacks. And so I'm going to pull and read from this today. This is poems by Nikki Giovanni. And this particular volume by Nikki Giovanni is titled Cotton Candy on a Rainy Day. Just a little bit of background in terms of my own connection to Nikki Giovanni. I've had 2 encounters where I've actually been in the same space with her. Actually 3. One, the first time when she came to Johnson C. Smith when I was living in Charlotte. I think I just recently moved off campus. I was a junior and I was working at Pizza Hut, and I had to ask my managers for time off. I was like, I'm gonna need one of these evenings off because Nikki Giovanni is coming to campus. And I remember my boss was just like, who is Nikki Giovanni? And I was like, how do you not know who Nikki Giovanni is? And he said, apparently he's some Italian guy, but, and I was like, okay, yeah, you really don't know who Nikki Giovanni is. That was the first encounter. The second time was when I worked at East Carolina University, and we had an opportunity to bring Nikki Giovanni to our campus following the tragic incident that had happened on our campus in Virginia. And she was able to really just kind of speak some truths that always stay with me in terms of when you are reading the writing of your students. And so much is in that writing that it is important that we read those assignments. And when we feel like there is something of concern in those writings, to raise the alarm. And I think that is very much what she did at Virginia Tech. She raised the alarm. It was probably not heeded, but it's important. And so the reading of our students' papers, it's an intimate act. It should be taken seriously, and sometimes we do need to raise the alarm. And I thought that was an important message from her. And then the third time I was in Massachusetts a few summers ago at a conference at the Massachusetts College for Liberal Arts. And one of my mentors, Emily Williams, was sponsoring a conference on diversity and inclusion, and Nikki Giovanni was the keynote speaker. And she always really comes with these gems. She uses language to its fullest extent, all words. I don't think there's any word that's taboo. And so I just thought I would pull this book and start with some poetry. I'm also thinking of my friend Tara Betts, who is in Chicago, who also has a YouTube channel where she is reading poetry. So please, if you have not had a chance to hear her, she is a poet. So when she reads, she is reading with the skill set of a craft that she has honed over decades. And her name is, again, Tara Betts, Betts. And you really should not only check out her channel, but also check out her work. Her poetry is just very timely. She did a really just poignant poetry book on Muhammad Ali when he passed, and some other things. So I'm thinking about Tara as well as thinking about my grandmother, Sarah Mack, and trying to move this conversation forward about how does one put together a library, and particularly when you are not connected to the academy, because again, I have books that I'm preparing in terms of what I'm teaching this semester or what I may be writing this semester. But for people who are outside of the academy, libraries are still important. And I think I picked this selection the first time around because this is not just a book of poetry. And I think I have in some previous episodes talked about how surprised I was that my grandmother loved literature, because I always associated her with historical and current events. She was always the person that could debate anyone about something that had happened in the past, something that was happening in the current day. And it is a mistake to not think that some of what people are thinking is not informed by the creative works, particularly by people of African descent. I also like this book, not just because it is poetry and it is literature, but it's also it's been autographed by Nikki Giovanni. And it is also a gift that was given to my grandmother from my cousin, Rosemary. And she just puts here on the on this inside blank page, to Aunt Sarah from Rosemary, Happy New Year. And this was in 1979. So this is really appropriate to kind of go into a new year thinking about a gift that my cousin Rosemary gave to my grandmother at the beginning of a new year. And this was not a gift that just sat on the shelf. Again, one of the really enjoyable pieces of doing this particular work is to go through and not only look at what books she had in her collection, what books she chose to hold on to, but also the glosses or the ways in which she is marking the text for future conversation, for some future engagement, to remember what she was finding as most poignant on any given reading. So I'm going to just pull out some of the glosses, some of the places where she's taken her light blue highlighter and just kind of marked into some of these pages. This is actually the first instance where she has highlighted just a little bit from Paula Giddings' introduction, and Paula Giddings titles her introduction "A Woman of the 70s." And the place where my grandmother has marked is a place where Nikki Giovanni's words appear. And so we see the quotation marks. And this is Nikki Giovanni speaking. "There is always something to do," she tells youngsters. "There are hungry people to feed, naked people to clothe, sick people to comfort and make well. And while I don't expect you to save the world, I do think it's not asking too much for you to love those with whom you sleep, share the happiness of those whom you call friend, encourage those among you who are visionary, and remove from your life those who offer you depression, despair, and disrespect." I'm not going to interpret that. I'm going to leave that right there and and just move on to the next place where my grandmother has marked in the text. There's a poem here, it's on page 45, and it's titled Age. And she actually marks the last stanza with an asterisk. But I'm going to read the I'm going to read the entire poem just for some context. And then when I get to the last stanza, I'll make note of that as well. This is Nikki Giovanni, and this poem is titled Age. We tend to fear old age as some sort of disorder that can be cured with the proper brand of aspirin or perhaps a bit of Bengay for the shoulders. It does, of course, pay to advertise. One hates the idea of the first gray hair, a shortness of breath, devastating blows to the ego, indications we are doing what comes naturally. It is almost laughable that we detest aging when we are first become aware we want it. Little girls of 4 or 5 push with eyes shining brightly at Gram or Mommy. The lie that they are 7 or 8. Little girls at 10 worry that a friend has gotten her monthly and she has not. Little girls of 12 can be socially crushed by lack of knobs on their chests. Little boys of 14 want to think they want a woman. The little penis that simply won't erect is shattering to their idea of manhood. If perhaps they get a little peach fuzz on their faces, they may survive. Adolescence proving there may indeed be life after high school. The children begin to play older without knowing the price is weariness. Age teaches us that our virtues are neither virtuous nor our vices foul. Age doesn't matter really. What frightens is mortality. It dawns upon us that we can die. At some point it occurs, we surely shall. It is not death we fear, but the loss of youth. Not the youth of our teens, where most of the thinking took place somewhere between the navel and the knee, but the youth of our 30s, where career decisions are going well, and we were respected for our abilities, or the youth of our 40s, where our decisions proved, if not right, then not wrong either. And the house, after all, is half paid. It simply may be that work is so indelibly tied to age that the loss of work brings the depression of impending death. There are so many, too many, who have never worked and therefore for whom death is a constant companion. As lack of marriage lowers divorce rates, lack of life prevents death. The unwillingness to try is worse than any failure. And then here's where Sarah Mack has her asterisk in this stanza. In our youth, our ignorance gives us courage. With age, our courage gives us hope. With hope, we learn that man is more than the sum of what he does. We are also what we wish we did, and age teaches us that even that doesn't matter. The next poem that she has marked Her markings are actually in a stanza that is in the middle of the poem, and this is a poem titled Their Fathers. I will be bitter when I grow old. I have seen the weakness of our race, though I, as with many others, am reluctant to give it name. Each day I face the world through fantasies of glories, of past glories, who I deceive I am not at all sure, not myself, not the whites above. Surely even the children know the sterility of their fathers. There are both reasons and excuses. None are lacking in understanding the causes of cold front meeting. A warm mass of air causes rain also, but that reasons offer less comfort than a simple raincoat. Mankind alone among the mammals communicates with his species justification for his behavior. None among us lack compassion or understanding or even sympathy. Emotion is not a response to inaction, and undoubtedly there are those who are so unfeeling they cannot represent mental or emotional health. We have seen the Germans and the Israeli reaction and the Palestinian response in our own time. We know the truth of the Africans and the Indians. We know we have only begun the horror of what is waiting south of our borders and south of our latitude. Blood perhaps not always, blood perhaps should not always be the answer, but perhaps it always is. My people have suffered so much for so long. We are pitiful in our misery. And here are Sarah Mack's markings on this particular stanza. We boost our spirits by changing our minds rather than our condition. Blacks are still rather cheap to purchase unemployment insurance, a grant for a program to fail, enough seed money to ensure bankruptcy. My people, like magnificent racehorses, have blinders. There is always talk of the mighty past, but no plans for a decent future. If no man is an island, Black Americans stand to prove a people can be a peninsula. We are extended, phallic-like, in an ocean of whiteness, though that is not our problem. Our extension, like arms on the body or legs on a trunk, is essential to balance. One neither walks nor stands without extensions. One is not Black without white, nor male without female. What is true of the mass is no less true of the individual. Someone said the only emotion Black men show is rage or anger, which is only partly true. The only rage and anger they show are to those who would want to love them and bear their children, and with them walk into the future. Why do we, who have offered expectation, have to absorb pain? I will grow bitter in old age because life is not a problem, but a process, and there are no formulas to our situation. The dinosaurs became extinct. Ripened fruit falls from the bough, and I grow tired of hoping. It is only natural that bitterness rests within my spirit. The air is polluted, streams are poisoned, and I have seen the hollow look of hatred in the dull, worn faces of their fathers. This next poem is titled Choices, and there are actually two stanzas that she's marked. She's marked the second and fourth stanza, but I'm going to read the entire poem. choices. If I can't do what I want to do, then my job is not to do what I don't want to do. It is not the same thing, but it's as best as I can do. If I can't have what I want, then my job is to want what I've got and be satisfied that at least there is something more to want. Since I can't go where I need to go, then I must go where the signs point, though always understanding parallel movement is not lateral. When I can't express what I really feel, I practice feeling what I can express, and none of it is equal, I know, but that's why mankind alone among the mammals learns to cry. And then this last poem that Sarah Mack has marked is titled Makeup. And there's one stanza that is the third from the last that she has highlighted here. But I'm going to read the entire poem titled Makeup. We make up our faces for lots of reasons. To go to the movies, to go to some junior prom, to see ice hockey, or watch the Dodgers come home again defeated. Going to the grocery store only requires lipstick, while a bridge game can mean a quick trip to the hairdresser for a touch-up. I clean my makeup before going to bed alone, and if my mood is foul, I spray the sheets with Ultraban. Most faces are made up before the public is faced, whether male, female, or child. It is always so appropriate, don't you know, to put a little mascara around the eyes. We make up fantasies to face life. We need to believe we are good on the job, or at least in bed. We make up lies to impress people who are making up lies to impress us. And if we either took all the makeup off, life wouldn't be worth living. We make up excuses to say I'm sorry, that forgive me because, and after all, didn't I tell you why? And I make up with you because you aren't strong enough to reach out to say, come home, I need you. So these are just the places where Sarah Mack has marked in Nikki Giovanni's Cotton Candy on a Rainy Day. I hope you enjoyed just hearing a little bit of poetry in the new year. Here's a picture of Nikki Giovanni on the back of this particular volume. It's a very 70s picture, so I think that is definitely connected to the introduction from Paula Giddings, where she titles her Woman of the 70s. But arguably, Nikki Giovanni is a woman of the 80s, 90s, and of the 21st century. So I would encourage you to pick up some of her poetry. One of my favorite poems by Nikki Giovanni is Nikki Rosa, and that is just a quintessential poem about growing up, and even if it's in the midst of maybe poverty or some negative circumstances that are in society, that it is just invaluable to grow up with parents that never make you feel like you are defined by those circumstances. So I actually just took back down from the shelves. This was one of the books that I discussed in an earlier Sarah Max Stacks. This is the African American Norton Anthology, the Norton Anthology for African American Literature, and this is the first edition. And this is just helpful to be able to pull down certain reference books. And so here we are, we're talking about Nikki Giovanni. And I thought, since I mentioned one of my favorite Nikki Giovanni poems, that it would be helpful to just read that also in connection to the volume that is part of Sarah Mack's collection. So this is Nikki Rosa, and I love this poem. Nikki Rosa. Childhood remembrances are always a drag if you're Black. You always remember things like living in Woodlawn with no inside toilet, and if you become famous or something, they never talk about how happy you were to have your mother all to yourself, and how good the water felt when you got your bath from one of those big tubs that the folks in Chicago barbecue in. And somehow when you talk about home, it never gets across how much you understood their feelings as the whole family attended meetings about Hollydale. And even though you remember, your biographers never understand your father's pain as he sells his stock and another dream goes. And though you're poor, it isn't poverty that concerns you. And though they fought a lot, it isn't your father's drinking that makes any difference, but only that everybody is together and you and your sister have happy birthdays and good Christmases. And I really hope no white person ever has cause to write about me, because they'll never understand Black love is Black wealth. And they'll probably talk about my hard childhood and never understand that all the while I was quite happy. That is Nikki Giovanni. This poem was published in 1968. So thank you for listening. Thank you for giving me a place to have these conversations about my grandmother's collection of books, and really just trying to theorize how a person puts together a library. And sometimes they are selecting books that are of interest, and sometimes a book is a gift, and it's a gift that's worth keeping. So thank you to my cousin Rosemary for giving us this opportunity to share what my grandmother was focused on in terms of Nikki Giovanni's work, Cotton Candy on a Rainy Day. Have a great day, everybody.